not really give much of an introduction. Mark Luckie, we all know who he is. Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
He did lots of stuff before. He created a blog called 10,000 Words. That's what a lot of people know him from. He's now the National Innovations Editor to the Washington Post, which is a really cool title.
Yeah.
So, Mark Luckie.
Hi, everybody. So just want to start off by saying we've been talking a lot today. I've been listening and taking notes because there are things that I've heard today that I'd like to use in my own position. But we're talking a lot about what's happening now. What are we doing now? What are the tools that we're using now? The space that I sort of inhibit is what's happening next. What are we doing next? What are we doing that other people aren't doing? And of course, with social media and journalists, you have a lot of people who are online talking about these things. And so I have innovation. We're going to be talking about innovation today. One of the things that I'm here to do, I'm not trying to bowl you over with what's cool and all that, because as I've said before, I'm not about doing what's cool. Cool, leave that for the cool kids. We need things that are actually usable within journalism. And if we can make money doing that, then hey, that's even better. But what I'm here to do is help you foster ideas for your own coverage. Some of the ideas are big, some of them are small. What I want you to think about as I'm showing you these things is how can this apply to what I'm doing, okay? I know this is a keynote, but I'm not a graduation speaker, so if you have a question at any time, please don't wait till the end, because then you'll be like, oh, I forgot what my question was, and then everybody's going to jam questions. So if you have a question, I can't wait, just throw up your hand, I'll call on you, I'll repeat the question for video, and we can go about it that way. So, and I appreciate you guys coming out and listening to little old me, I appreciate that. One of the things I want to, Oh, there we go, cool. All right, so sorry for the darkness of the screen, but everybody knows what this is. It's the Washington Post website. I want to start off by telling you a little bit about what I actually do on a day-to-day basis, which is to say no day is the same. That's how journalism goes. So my official title is National Innovations Editor. What that means is I'm responsible for the web presence of the national section. That includes politics, national security, health, science, and environment. Let's see, I always forget a bunch of them and they get mad at me. But there's a lot of the federal government, there's a lot of sections in it. And so what I'm doing is I'm working with reporters and editors to see how we can complement their stories. How can we make their stories better for the web? What are the things that we can't do in print that we can do on the web? And of course, we have a lot of different tools at our disposal. We have photos, we have video, we have galleries, we have audio, we have comment systems. Those are the base tools that we use, but then there's all the other stuff. There's all the tools that I mentioned on 10,000 Words that we could possibly be incorporating into our coverage. And so when I first got there, it was, okay, we wrote this story, now do something with it. And I'd be like, what, are you serious? Because that is the wrong, absolute wrong way of doing online journalism. Writing a print story and then trying to find some web thing to tack onto it, usually at the last minute, does not serve the audience at all, because it seems last minute. If you put some thought and some emphasis into what you're doing, be it a story or online element or anything that you do in your life, it's going to be better if you put more thought into it. So what I've tried to change in the culture, and a lot of the sort of web first people who are in there, is saying, okay, no, it's not going to be, just write the story and then have the web team do something for it. It's, let's talk about the story as you're thinking about it. Before you even start writing, let's talk about what you're thinking about. What are the tools, not even talking about tools, what are the things that you want to show or convey on the web? The funny thing is that the Washington Post people, a lot of them have been there for 30, 40, 50 years, and here comes this young kid and they're talking about let's put something on the web. At first they were like, I've been here for 50 years and I know what I'm doing. But the reality is that I'm coming from a different approach. And so everybody's working together to sort of bring these stories to life. So let me show you what sort of my job looks like. So my job is sort of split two ways. One is doing big picture projects. These are things like the elections, the Pulitzer Prize winning packages, That's half of the job. And so this is one of those things. Also, I am going to include links to everything that I've mentioned here. So if you don't see it very well or you want to find out more about it later, I'll provide that later. So you don't have to worry about writing anything down. So this is the Washington Post website. This is one of my favorite projects that we did. This is the Chinese state dinner when Chinese President Hu Jintao came and visited President Obama for the state dinner. And obviously this was a big deal for us. And so we threw all our guns at it. The great thing for me is coming from the Center for Investigative Reporting, which was sort of like a ramshackle sort of operation. Very good journalism coming out of it, but you sort of have everybody sort of crowded in this one space. Going to the Washington Post where it's like the size of a football field and you have all these tools available to you. And so we wanted to be diligent about what we use for this package. So you've got your traditional stories, you have a photo galleries in here, you have social media elements. I'm going to scroll down if I can. Can't scroll? No? Okay, there we go. So we've got headlines in here. There's a lot of things that are hidden in here. We've got bloggers who were covering different aspects of it. Okay, not just the political angle, but also what are they going to be eating? What is Michelle Obama going to be wearing? What we're basically trying to do is cover every avenue of news, because we know that everybody who comes to the Washington Post isn't there for just political news. They want to find all the different angles. So my job as an innovations editor is to first identify the things that I think that people should be contributing, and then talking with the departments and seeing if they're already contributing that, and also pulling that together for everyone, and then making sure that this happens. The other part of my job, which is probably the more fun part of it, is I actually get to build things. I get to build cool things. Things that we have web producers who know how to do all these things, who know how to do web basic HTML and CSS, but they're not well versed in sort of building sort of innovative tools. And so I will create something and then use that as a template for them to use it later in their work. And so this is something I pulled together using the mapping tool UMapper. How many of you guys have heard of UMapper? UMapper, okay. By the end of this, everybody will be familiar with it. So UMapper is a free mapping tool that allows you to create maps. And if you think about any sort of story that deals with location, you can add a map to it. Say we're writing a story about this conference right here. We could put a map on it that says, okay, it's on this street in Portland. Or if there was a parade, we could say, here's the parade route and map that. And so what I wanted to do is take the map and do something different. This is, like I said, built-in UMapper, and it's an interactive quiz that tests people's knowledge of China. So the president of China is coming, how much do you know about China? And so what this says, let's see, the question up there is Canton Tower, the tallest concrete tower in the world, is located here. And so, uh-oh, I missed it. Okay, China's capital city is, who knows what China's capital city is? Just yell it out. Beijing. All right, so now I have to find Beijing on this map, except I have no idea where it is. Oh no, there it is. All right, click. There it is, and it gives me a score, and it tells me that that is the correct answer. It says a deadly 2008 earthquake was centered here. Anybody know where that is? Sichuan. I have no idea where that is, so I'm just going to click. Oh, there we go. I'm close enough, but I didn't get close enough. So basically, the closer you click on this map, the closer, the more points you get. And at the end, it gives you a leaderboard. Post readers could compare their scores to other people. And this was all built. The longest part was actually writing the questions and making sure they were researched and geotagged. And putting it in UMapper, umapper.com, was crazy easy. Yes, do the map, exactly, yes. And this is sort of like an embeddable widget, sort of like a YouTube video that you copy the embed code and put it in your own site, so it still has the Washington Post template. Yes? Why U, letter U, mapper, yes. This is the sort of thing that I love doing, which is to find out what the Post can be using. And of course, after this, we started using it a lot. I think we had a Haunted Washington quiz that asked you to find out where the Lincoln bedroom is and stuff like that, which is really cool. So other production things, let's see. So a lot of the production things I do, I'm really trying to, like I said, find out what's not in the story that can be told with visual elements. And one of those is, I mentioned that science falls under national. We had a story on the food pyramid guidelines. Well, my question was, well, if we have new guidelines, what's up with the old ones? How do they differ from what exists now? And so what I created was a timeline of the different food pyramids. And this is the first one. It's from 1916, called Food for Young Children. It was incredibly depressing. This one is the Basic 7 from 1943. Lots of like weird 1940s foods, which, you know. But if you click through this, you can see how the food pyramid has evolved over time. And this is the kind of information, this was working with the reporter and saying, okay, where can I find this information? Because often the reporters, they really are busy. You know, I'm working on my story, I'm trying to get it on deadline. Well, please just give me the information that I need to make this happen, or point me in the direction that it can happen, and then we can build this together. And then of course this goes to an editor and to the reporter, and they look at it and make sure that it's okay.
What tool did you use?
That was an in-house tool. Sorry, I can't see. Where are you? Oh, hey. That was an in-house tool that we developed, but if you want to create timelines, I'll talk more about this later. Dipity.com, DIPITY.com, creates timelines very similar to these. I will say that our graphics department, when I use tools, this is off the record, so please don't tweet this, but we have battles. I'm like, we can easily create something using an embeddable tool. No, we got to use something from scratch, and we've got to build it in our own template. And I'm like, okay, can you build that? And they're like, no, we don't have the time. So I'm just like, okay, so it does, either it gets the graphic or it doesn't. So my thing is, okay, I'm going to build it. If you build something better, fine, replace it with what I'm doing. But just because we don't have grand resources to throw hours at something doesn't mean that it's not worth doing. My thing is time. It has to be fast because I only have so many hours in the day. And it also has to be cheap, and I'll talk more about that later. Cheap or inexpensive, that's my theory. I'm a perpetual college kid. Like I still eat ramen noodles and stuff like that. So, this is an interesting thing. Working with one of our reporters, Karen Tumulty, who was writing a story about Tea Partiers using the Constitution and constantly referring to the Constitution in their arguments. Well, I wanted to say, okay, well, which parts of the Constitution are they referring to? And so what we did, how many of you guys have heard of Document Cloud? Great, more hands. So Document Cloud is basically a tool that you can use to upload what would otherwise be a PDF. And if you've ever used a PDF on the web, you know it's clunky, you know it's the worst. Document Cloud is an embeddable document viewer that allows you to annotate a document. So if you look right here, down in the corner, those little yellow note tabs are annotations, and I'll talk about that in a second. It also does OCR, which is optical screen recognition. Am I getting that? Character recognition. There we go. That wasn't even a C. All right. Optical character recognition. So basically, it reads the document and translates it then to text. Now, it works for documents like court documents or police documents, but for something like this, the Constitution, which is incredibly cursive, doesn't work so well. But that wasn't really the point. So what we did here is identify the different points in the Constitution that Tea Parties have referred to. So I uploaded a version of the Constitution that I downloaded off the Library of Congress, uploaded it into Document Cloud, and if you click one of these notes, it says Article 1, Section 2, Clause 1, the newly sworn in members of the House of Representatives are empowered by this section of the Constitution. Obviously very helpful if you're sort of a constitutional scholar or you're interested in what the Tea Party is referring to. The great thing is that we also have a link to people who have referred to this particular passage. And then we also, because the Constitution is hard to read and the OCR doesn't work with such an old document, we have that text from that particular clause in this document. Cool stuff, yeah? Yeah? Okay, cool. You guys are gonna give me a mind case, okay? Everything doesn't have to be like super serious. That's a great thing about working at the Washington Post. When I first got there, I thought it was going to be people sitting around in suits and, you know, I don't know if you've seen that Family Guy episode where Brian works for, I think it was the New Yorker, and everybody's sitting around talking like this. You know, that's what I imagine. That's what I imagine the Washington Post is going to be like, but it's actually a lot of fun, cool people. who are very eager to try new things. And so one of the things we did, how many of you guys read 10,000 words? Cool. The rest of you, check it out. It's good. 10,000words.net, write that down. So 10,000 Words every year does Valentine's for journalists. And it's stuff like, I want to be your lead, or will you share my byline? You are the Woodward to my Bernstein, that sort of thing. And so they saw that I did that on 10,000 Words, and they were like, well, why don't we do it for DC? And so I was like, hey, I'm game. So what we did is created Valentine's for DC people. So we've got, I want to take the red line to your heart. We've got, you're the only monument in my life. You are the Biden to my Obama. And so these were created really quickly in Photoshop. And so we didn't want to, we're not a one-to-many organization. That's the old sort of structure of news. The new structure of news is many-to-many. So we want people to share not only our Valentines, but we wanted them to create their own Valentines. So we got this whole social thing going in. People could design their own Valentines. It went up in a user gallery that people could search through. If people didn't have the design skills, they had a Valentine randomizer. So basically they could submit the text for it, and it would get randomly pulled. If you refresh the page or push the refresh button, it would create it will present a new Valentine that somebody submitted. So we're thinking not only, you know, what can we do, but also what can our readers do. We're really, really big on that. So one more thing I want to show you. I have a print byline in the Post, which is incredibly weird for me, because I said when I stopped doing reporting back in, oh, so long ago, yeah, right. A couple years ago, I stopped doing print reporting in favor of digital journalism. I said, oh, I'm probably never going to see my byline in print. And I missed that sort of, you know, when you see a physical byline, I mean, you know, we're supposed to say, oh, the web is great, you know, that's where, you know, everybody has an opportunity. But really, you know, you get your name in a print paper that you can send your mother, which I did. It was an amazing feeling. So innovation can also be sort of a regression, if you will. Innovation doesn't have to be just the newest, hottest technology. It could also be something that's in print. What we did here is, if you've been watching the news at all, you know that Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare are really big right now. And we didn't want to reserve that information for just our web audiences. So what I created was a primer. What are the most frequently asked questions about Social Security? And got it in the paper. So think about that. It doesn't always have to be the newest, flashiest thing. The thing I did not miss, however, is people calling me, asking me about my article, saying, you're wrong. You know, every newsroom has those sort of like crazy people who call like every hour. I was subjected to that, so I was like, okay, this will be my first and last byline in the Post. So I'm here to tell you how to find the idea, how to come up with these sort of ideas. Let me close this out. Does anybody know who this woman is? I'll give you $1 if you know who this woman is.
Can't see her.
You can't see her. That's too bad. You're not getting $1.
It's not Kim, is it?
What'd you say?
Kim?
Diana Ing.
Who said that?
I read your URL.
Oh. All right, everybody. This is Diana Ing. That is correct, sir. I owe you $1. All right. Okay, well, here's another question. Does anybody know who Diana Ing is?
Craftsy.
Who?
Craftsy.
Craftsy, close. What does she actually do? Does anybody know?
Do it yourself crafts.
Close but no cigar. So I'm going to tell you who she is because this will go on all night. So Diana Ing is a contestant on the second season of Project Runway. How many of you guys watch Project Runway? I know I'm not the only guy. Okay. All right. So I love Project Runway because of the creativity, you know, coming up with something from scratch. And so this, of course, appeals to me. Diana Ing is one of the most unique contestants to ever be on the show because she combined technology and fashion. What she would do was incorporate sort of scientific things into her designs. I'll show you an example of that. This is sorry, it's really dark. But this is a hooded sweatshirt that has microchips and all kinds of wiring in it. And it measures your heart rate. And if your heart rate gets elevated, it'll snap a picture of what you're looking at that point. And it'll save it to a drive that you can then take onto your computer. I mean, who's even thinking about this sort of thing, right? So I'm like, oh my God, I could totally use one of these hoodies. You gotta make it for a man, because I don't know if that's my size. But you know, this is the kind of thing I'm like, oh my God, she's amazing. And I'm saying this because I watched the Project Runway Marathon as I was writing what I need to write. But I was completely enamored with her because here's somebody who's working in a very traditional field, who's working in fashion. I mean, you know, you get sort of innovation in fashion, but at the end of the day, it's still cloth. It's still thread and cloth. But she found a way to make it sort of new and different. And that's what I sort of look at, and I'm like, wow, if she could take something like fashion and insert technology, I can definitely do it for journalism. So I looked at her as a model, and that's what I encourage you guys to do. One of the things that struck me about Diana, she was interviewing, she said, well, I don't really read fashion magazines. I read science journals, which I thought was interesting because I feel the same way. I rarely read your traditional journalism. I'm not picking up the New York Times. My boss would kill me if he heard me saying this. I don't pick up the New York Times first thing in the morning. I probably don't read the actual physical Washington Post paper until later in the end of the day. But you bet your bottom dollar, I've read Mashable, I've read Read Write Web, I've read TechCrunch, because I want to know what's happening. And these are the things, it's not divorcing myself from journalism. I'm a very avid journalist, but at the same time, I want to educate myself in things that are different from journalism. And so I do that by reading things that aren't related to journalism. Here's the thing about journalism blogging and the blogosphere is that a lot of people are saying the exact same things. They're saying, oh, you need to do social media. Oh, you need to do YouTube. Here's 5 ways to become a social media entrepreneur. And that stuff gets really old really quickly. And what I try to do with 10,000 words and what I try to do in my personal work is to identify things that are happening outside of journalism that I can bring into my personal work. I do a lot of the hard work for you on 10,000 words. You don't have to go out reading all these sciencey, techie things that I read. But if you look at these things, I'm identifying things from outside of journalism that you can use. So I also want to talk about another dress that she did. Also, again, dark to see, but basically this is a dress that had magnets that were attached to this little wrap thing, and you could basically take the magnets off. Magnets! You could take the magnets off and basically wrap the skirt around the back and attach it to magnets there, and it'd be a whole new dress, which is cool. Except when the model got on the runway, the magnets didn't work, and the dress was like falling. It was like, you know, it was looking. I mean, it was a nice dress, but it was falling. And the judges were like, "Okay, what's going on there? Like, you know, beautiful dress, but what's happening there?" She was like, "Oh, it's attached with magnets." And they're like, "Wow, that's really, really cool if it would have worked. But, you know, we got to give you a low score because it actually didn't." Well, here's the thing that I want to tell you, and why I'm telling you about this dress, is that you can't be afraid to experiment and you can't be afraid to fail. Because in journalism, there's not a culture of experimentation. It's, okay, has that worked for another organization, and then we'll do it in our newsroom. Or has somebody done that before somewhere else, and, you know, let's look at that. Really, what I'm encouraging you to do is think about things, think about these new ideas, but also experiment with them. If they don't work, they don't work. You know, in the web world, people are more forgiving if something doesn't work. We had on the Washington Post, we had a Trump tracker. And what we wanted to do, because we didn't physically know where Trump was, he hadn't announced his schedule, we used the hashtag Trump tracker on Twitter. And we were like, oh, this is great. People are gonna like tell us where he is. Except no, they were giving us like fake information. They're like, Donald Trump is in the bathroom eating a banana. Donald Trump. So we were like, oh my God. And so of course people were chastising us. They were like, why did you create this like silly little thing? But if it had worked, it would have been great. But the great thing is that we started it. We did something different. And it may not have worked out the way that we wanted it to, but at least it worked. In my own personal work for the upcoming election, the South Carolina primary, I created a tree map. How many of you guys know what a tree map is? Okay, a tree map is basically an infographic that breaks something up into blocks. And so if something has 50%, it's going to have a larger block. If it has 20%, it's going to have a lower block. And I wanted to use this to explain how many candidates which candidates had won the most South Carolina primaries, or what percentage of the primary did they capture. And I had toiled over this. I had created like algorithms for this thing. I had spent hours in Photoshop. And at the end, the design team was like, look, this is not gonna work. And I'm just like, really? Because I just spent 2 days on it. And they were like, it's not gonna work. So I'm like, okay, I had to step away from it. But the cool thing is, I know that that's not gonna work next time. Second, I know that I'm not gonna spend my time doing algorithms for things because that took insanely long. But you know, I learned from my mistakes, and I encourage you to do the same thing. Mini eyes, yes, but I wanted to create something. It was cool. It was designed. It was from scratch. It was, yeah, it was good. But yes, mini eyes is great. All right. So the thing that I would impart to you is that something somebody told me a long time ago that kind of stuck with me. A journalist whose sole passion is journalism is not a good journalist, because you have nothing to bring to the table. My passion is technology. I bring that to the table. Our political writers, they love politics. Whether they were working at the Post or not, they'd be writing about politics. Some people you know, love DC, so they'll write about DC. But if you don't have anything, all you say is, I love journalism, it's like, okay, really? What do you have to bring to the table? So I'd encourage you to do what I've done, and which is the reason why I'm speaking here, is following my passion, following the things that I'm passionate about and incorporating it into what I do. So you, sir, what are you passionate about? And speak loudly so they can hear you. Here's the mic.
I'm passionate about sports ethics. Is a big interest of mine.
Sports ethics. So how do you incorporate sports ethics into your work?
Well, I have a blog where I cover sports ethics, and I think it's really interesting because I do work in journalism, and so it gives me an avenue to apply some of the same investigative tools and some of the same, you know, the same style of writing into something where I can take it a little more broad and interpret it many different ways, and it applies differently to different sports, because there's always different ethical dilemmas in different sports. In professional cycling, it might be sponsorship related, it might be drug related, it could be any number of things.
Cool. And I bet you get bored of it sometimes, but it keeps you going because you're writing about something that you love.
Approach it
from different angles. Absolutely. You, ma'am. What are you passionate about? Yes. Your name tag says Whitney. Hi, Whitney. What are you passionate about? Come on. Teaching. How do you incorporate that into your work?
Well, right now I'm just a student.
Okay. All right. Nothing wrong with that. Claps for the students. I was a student once. I got to start somewhere, right?
I'm working as a writing assistant right now, and so teaching college students how to write better.
Okay. So you're already doing it.
Yeah.
All right. Everybody give them a hand. So I'm talking about identifying your passion. If you're not working on your passion right now, you need to find some way to do it either in your day job or even as a side thing. 10,000 Words started off as a little side project that I was working on. It quickly ballooned to something even bigger. But because I was passionate about journalism and technology, it didn't feel so much as a chore. So I'd encourage you to also do the same thing. So, Groupon, how many of you guys have heard of it? Lots of hands, great. Why didn't a journalist start this? Huh? No? Okay, here's the thing. Journalism and technology being innovative is not just about seeing what's ahead, what nobody else is doing. It's about finding the things that are, you're using your existing resources in a different way. Newspapers already have coupons. Why didn't they come up with Groupon? It's again that culture of experimentation just wasn't there. But now that Groupon is successful, Living Social, all these other sort of coupon sites are big. Now you've got lots of newspaper sites doing it. The Washington Post is doing it, and other sites are doing it. So the other thing I'm imparting to you is to use your existing resources. What do you have that nobody else has? You know, if you're talking about writing a street newspaper and writing about the homeless, you've got an audience, you've got a resource right there that you can do something different with. One of the other things I was going to mention is Craigslist. We could have done Craigslist. We already have ads in newspapers and that sort of thing. It's about finding what you already have. What can I do different? Somebody told me that if you add blank plus technology equals money, that's a good formula. So you basically have to find out what that blank is. So yeah, it's like Mad Lib. Somebody throw out a Mad Lib. What's your blank? Sir, what's your an orange shirt? Yeah, what would be your blank? Just anything random that comes, first thing that comes to your head. You gotta work for that dollar.
Plus,
What's the other one? Blank and what?
Blank plus technology equals cash. What would your blank be? Just say whatever random.
Public transportation.
Public transportation plus technology equals money. Well, here's the thing. Public transportation, people want to know how to get to their bus routes. They want to know where the nearest bus location is. They want to find out when the next bus is coming. You get an app going, you've got cash. Yeah? You see where I'm going with this? Yeah. Except lots of people have those apps. And that, I'll refer to that later. So a lot of things that newspapers, print publications, magazines, TV, radio have in common is they have lots of archives. They have lots of stories that they've written for over the years. I think we need to make greater strength of that. Google News is archiving all our stuff. We shouldn't let Google News do that for us because we can bring people to our site. If you ever go to any sort of news media site that's based on a mainstream media publication, you know that the search is awful. Trying to find something that was written more than a week ago is hell, including the Washington Post. I have to Google Washington Post stories. It's really ridiculous. Identifying things like that and making it different, making it better, so we don't have to send people off-site. The other thing that we need to be examining is relational. How do these stories fit together? I'm working on a package on redistricting right now. And so I had to comb through all of our redistricting coverage, and I wanted to find out, okay, here, we've got a whole bunch of stories about Virginia right here. We've got a whole bunch of stories about Maryland right here. Let's group these together and make it easier for people to find. And if you do that, people are going to come back to you. You don't, like I said, you don't have to send them off-site. I'm full of maxims, so you gotta, I apologize in advance for it. But another thing that I heard that's, again, stuck with me is copying something innovative and making it your own is not innovative, which is actually true. It's actually true. So if I take, bus apps and make my own, that's specific to my sort of, or the Washington Post or whatever, that's not necessarily innovative. It may be helpful, but it's certainly not innovative. That's not to say that there's nothing wrong about that. Again, on 10,000 words, I'm looking at the things that people have already done and adding journalism to it. So technology plus journalism equals win. That's my formula. So what I want you to do is, I'm big on algorithms, I'm a nerd, so come on. So you have to find what that plus is for you. The sign of genius, I read, I'm big into human behavioral psychology, mostly because I'm interested in how reporters can be better reporters. How can they identify things about their subject, little twitches, little eye movements, posture, how can they use that to better their reporting? And so I was reading this article in Psychology Today, and they were talking about the signs of genius. And one of the signs of genius is being able to take something that is completely unrelated to what you're doing and making it related to what you do. So I know you're all geniuses because you're all here. Yes? Everybody raise your hand, you're a genius? Okay, yeah. Everybody raise your hand, you're all geniuses, you're here. Everybody give yourself a round of applause. Yes. Because you're geniuses, I want you to think in this way. Take something that's completely unrelated to what you do. And a lot of what I do is I said this before, is looking for inspiration outside of journalism. I'm a big fan of architecture, I'm a big fan of fashion, I'm a big fan of a lot of things, and I look at that and see how I can apply it to my job. A lot of times I go to museums. Museums are actually, if you think about it, they're doing journalism. They're trying to explain things to people who may not know what they're talking about. They even have the little placards in front of the exhibits that are, that's a form of journalism. If you go to any museum now, you'll see that they have interactive exhibits. So I'm looking at stuff like that and I'm like, oh, that's cool. How can I turn that into sort of a web offer? How can I make that into a webby sort of thing? So it's thinking in that sort of way. So again, translating something that exists into something completely new. This is, how many of you guys have seen this? This is Newsmap. You guys have seen this? This is newsmap.jp. Again, you'll get the links after this. And so basically what this is actually a tree map, what I was talking about earlier. So what this does, it pulls the stories from Google News, and the stories that have the most related stories are bigger blocks. So you'll see over here, am I out of camera if I go over there? I'll stay right here. All right. So you'll see that stories about bin Laden, porn found in bin Laden's home, that's sad. You'll see that these stories have lots of, they're bigger blocks because they have lots of stories being written about that subject. You can't see it right here, but there are different colors. Red is world news. Blue is sports news. Green, I think, is down here. It's technology. And you can sort by the different sort of channels of news. It also sorts it by time. So these over here are all red, but this one in the corner is darker. That's because it's older news. So I can look at this, and I use this often in the morning. I look and say, okay, bin Laden is the big news of the day. That story over there is older, but maybe we should be checking that out. And not so much technology news today. You see what I'm talking about. So a lot of news organizations should be using something like this, yeah? I mean, helping people to identify the stories within their organization that, instead of sending them off to Google News, sending them off to your organization, whatever media. Very few organizations have actually done this. MSNBC is one particular one that has done this. It's not so much a tree map, but here's a visual identifier of our news for the day. This is one, is it Beltway or Wonderwall? This may be Beltway. They have two different sites. Beltway is for political news, and it gives you sort of a screen like this. It'll say, here's a President Obama story over here. Here's a Donald Trump story over here. And then they have Wonderwall, which is entertainment news. And it's done in this different sort of way. News sites a lot of times look alike, and they don't have to. They don't have to be an endless sea of links. That's boring. Everybody does that. Why not, get a designer, get a designer off Craigslist if you have to, but get somebody who can create something that's new and different, and not just for the sake of being new and different. We talked about niche audiences earlier. How do you do something that's different from your niche? Well, if everybody is writing about politics, why not create a site that presents the news in a different way, is what I'm saying. All right. So another site that I think people should be taking advantage of that not a lot of news organizations are doing is geolocation plus mobile plus news. And this is a new offer from Google News. They have Google News for mobile. So right now you can go to news.google.com on your mobile device, and you can read random stories. What they've done is to ask you for your location and then show you news that's happening around you. So, for example, if I pulled it up right here, I'd see news that this conference was happening here, maybe, or I'd see news there's a shooting down the street or something like that. And people, one of the things that's really big right now is personalization. Don't just shoot at me with a machine gun and give me all the news that you have. Give me the news that's relevant to me. And one way that you can do that is by targeting news to people. There are a number of other organizations that have done this, not news organizations. I'm giving you $1 million idea here, so you give me royalties later, yeah? Okay, cool. All right, and I've heard a lot of talk about apps today. Apps are really big in news organizations. You want people to get the news on their mobile, except that everybody has a news app, and people are just shoveling their stories on it. It's just like basically a website condensed like this, and that's not the best approach sometimes. That's, hey, we clap. Yeah, I love it. Yes. Because what you're doing is basically, people can go to your mobile site. You don't have to create a whole app. There's benefits to creating it. But what I'm saying is that you should think about creating apps that are relevant to your community. And that's why I was going to bring up the transportation app. A lot of sites we're talking about monetization. We need to be able to fund this great journalism that we're doing. Why not give the audience something useful that they're willing to pay for? A lot of news organizations, including the Washington Post, have created transportation apps. Something that shows you how to get on the bus or subway or metro or whatever, what stops you need to get to, where the nearest stop is. I saw this really cool one. It wasn't done by a news organization, but it's for the New York Metro, and it uses augmented reality. How many of you guys know what augmented reality is? Okay, half view. So augmented reality is, I never explained this right, but I'm just going to explain what the app does. So you look through your camera, and it'll tell you where the nearest New York subway station is. And you can turn your camera this way or that, and it will show you, okay, you need to go in this direction because the L is that way, or the 6 is that way, and then it'll give you directions. These are the things that people want. I used to be a New Yorker. I could not find a subway station to save my life. I'm wandering around at 3 a.m., and, you know, I was going to say intoxicated, but I'm not going to say it. Eating pizza, and I just want to know how to get to the nearest train. Where's the app that does that for me? Somebody had created it. If a news organization had created that, the news organization would be raking in the dough, or, you know, much more money than they already had. The thing is, again, experimenting, putting resources into it is another thing. You have to identify the resources that are necessary. Some of these big picture ideas you won't be able to do all the time, but if you think about it, you can create something that serves your audience. Let's see. So I'm going to run through this real quickly, and I'm running out of time. So I have a lot of ideas, and I'm weird that way. And here's the thing, I'll have a brilliant idea, and like 5 minutes later, I'll forget it. And I'm like, dang, what was that $1 million idea? I should have like written it down. So what I do now is I use, how many of you guys know Delicious? Delicious.com? Delicious is a social bookmarking service. It's being bought by the founders of YouTube. I'm very sad about that because it's been sort of languishing for a while. So I've moved over to Diigo. It's diigo.com, and basically allows you to bookmark any sort of site on the web. If you think sort of Instapaper, that sort of thing. But what I use it for is to use to bookmark the cool things that I've seen on the web that I think can be applied to the Washington Post. So here, that Google News mobile app that I just showed you, that's in there. And the other thing that I do is I add tags to things. So I'll say, okay, this will be good for crowdsourcing. This is an example of video that we should use. And so when you have these brilliant ideas, make sure you're writing them down and make sure that you're executing them. I'll show you a couple of examples. This is who wants to not get stabbed? Yes. You had a question? Or do you not want to get stabbed? Which one is it?
Yes, I do not want to get stabbed. Second,
yeah.
How is Diigo, how is it better than, say, Evernote or SimpleNote? Or
everybody has a tool that works for them. This one just happens to work for me. Yeah. So this is who wants to not get stabbed. Not created by a news organization. We will start the game. Basically, what it asks you. Uh-oh. No? Okay. Maybe not. So what it asks you is it presents 2 different images pulled from Google Maps, and it says from 2 different neighborhoods, and it asks you which of these neighborhoods do you think has the highest crime rate, just based on a Google Maps image, and you're supposed to guess, and it tells you which one. So I'm thinking, hey, we can use this for our local coverage. You know, just looking at maybe, you know, 7th and 14th, or, you know, up in Upper Marlboro, which one of these neighborhoods are you likely to get stabbed in? I mean, it's interesting and educational, which I'm like really into. So why not make the news fun? I mean, you know, stabbing isn't fun, of course, but the news can be. Yeah? Okay. This is a really interesting project. Again, you'll get the link to this. Tell all telephone records reveal politicians' life. So basically, I can't remember which news organization, I think it's European, but they basically FOIA'd the information from this politician's cell phone, geolocation data, his calendar, his check-ins maybe, I think were in there, and basically they mapped out where this guy went at any point in time, and it's also a timeline element into it. So you can imagine if I'm writing about, you know, Donald Trump and I can't find him using that hashtag, well, maybe, you know, if he was an elected official, I could FOIA his information, include it in the map, and we could show exactly where Donald Trump has been. Yeah. All right. How many of you guys know or have used QR codes? QR codes. All right, a QR code is basically a little bitty box that's a code, and if you scan it with your mobile phone or a compatible device, it'll take you to a link. It can send an email. Let's see, I'm sidetracking here, but one of my favorite apps is called Grocery IQ. and when I scan the little barcodes that are on milk or something like that, it'll save it onto a list on my phone. And so when I go to the grocery store, it'll say, you need milk, that sort of thing. It's really cool. So same idea for barcodes. People can scan something and it'll give them more information. We've used QR codes before in the Washington Post, actually physically printed them in the paper so that people could scan it, and it'll take you to some online element that you can't see in the paper. The idea that I had is to take that even further. We have lots of reports, lots of sort of lengthy things that won't fit into the paper. Why not use QR codes? Hey, instead of that read more link that we have, go to www.washingtonpost.com/whatever, why not have the QR code there so that people can instantly scan it and then read it on their mobile phones? And a lot of our readers are on the metro. They're sitting around. After they're reading their paper, they can easily be reading something that's on their mobile device. Again, an idea, taking something like books to barcodes, which is something completely separate, but finding a practical use for it. So innovation extends beyond just big picture projects. You don't have to just use it for things that are sort of big projects like the state dinner that I talked about. Think of the things that you can use for, think of ways that you can innovate in the little things that you're doing. This is the Fed page for the Washington Post. It covers the federal government. Basically, we've tried to innovate there because it's one of the smallest sections in the Post. It doesn't get a lot of love. So what we've tried to do, we've set up live chats with federal workers. We've done crowdsourcing. Hey, tell us what's happening at your job. We've used Google Voice to have people be able to call in and tell their information. So we're basically trying to find, for this very small knit community, what are the different ways, what are the different tools that we can use to bring them together and to better our reporting. Let's see, what is this? Okay, I'm just gonna show you cool stuff because that's what I love doing. Anyway, I talked about talking with reporters and editors because I can't be the lone technology guy like building stuff and coming up with ideas in the newsroom. It has to come together. So what I do, I don't say, okay, I have this cool tool that I want to use. What I do is I say, hey, reporter, editor, what is your story? What are you working on? What can I help show you? And that translates into something like this. We had a story about a black hole that was in space, and we didn't have we can't send a photographer out to space. So I was like, wait, I know a tool that we can use. We can use Google Sky. Google Sky is like Google Maps for constellations in the sky and stuff. Yeah. So I said, hey, if you give me the coordinates for that black hole, I can create an interactive map of it. And yeah, sure you can. Of course, here it is. I didn't tell them it took me like 10 minutes to make because they were like really wowed and impressed by it. But it literally took 10 minutes to make. But the end goal, it wasn't to create something cool. It was to say, hey, readers, we're telling you about this black hole. We've actually got a picture of it that you can play with. I'll give you one more example of that. I don't know if this will actually work for you. I'll try though. Probably won't work. But you've got the link to it. So basically, after we did a TikTok for the Japan earthquake, we had the story of a teacher who was riding her bike to escape the tsunami. And so what we did is we wanted to show the route that she took on her bike because we had that information from her friend. But instead of just doing a map that shows you, okay, from point A to point B, what we use is an interactive street view. So basically, this box that's gray right now, if you click play on that, it'll actually, using Google Street View, show you the route that she took on her bike, and you can actually see it. And it brings the story home that much more to actually see this is the woman pedaling for her life, trying to get away, and here's the route that she took. So adding more depth and more information to the stories. So I'm going to skip ahead because I know we're low on time. But how do you make these ideas work? Find a good team that can build some of these things. You don't have to have a huge expanse like the Washington Post. You can find somebody who can just work on that particular project that you want to work on. You can find people outside of the newsroom. The real trendy thing to do is to work with news organizations like ProPublica who are independent, or sort of like collegiate organizations, collegiate news organizations. I'd encourage you to look for technology companies who are doing something new. I found this great company on Kickstarter. Kickstarter is basically like a Spot Us for random stuff. And they're developing a 360-degree view camera that you can put on your iPhone, and you can get a 360-degree view of video, of any room. or location. And I was like, hey, we got to have that. So I invested my little 50 bucks in it so that I could get that camera when it first came out. So thinking about that, don't just go the traditional way saying, okay, I'm going to hire a bunch of students to write the project. That's not always the best way to go about it. The other thing is design. Design is very, very important. I mentioned that earlier because if you create this great project or write this great story, if it has an ugly design or the page is designed really horribly, then people are not going to pay attention to it. And you think, oh no, I can get by, you know, whatever. But it's actually true. There are whole studies on this whole thing. Self-promotion. If people don't know that this cool thing exists, then what's the point of doing it? So you have to feature it on your website. You have to tell people about it. Send it out in a blast email. We've got this thing that we really want you to check out. Post it on Facebook. Post it on Twitter. It's not worth doing a whole bunch of work or putting work into something that's new and useful if nobody knows about it. And the other thing is to follow through with your ideas. Some of those projects that I have saved will probably never get built. They're just ideas. But I try to follow through with as many of them as possible because it's not worth having an idea if it doesn't become actualized. And that's what I'd encourage you to do. So the last thing that I'll show you is, that's Kickstarter, that's the video, this is a conference. This 10 gun, make it work. All right. So I went for a walk this morning. I went for a leisurely stroll through Portland. Yes. And what I run into but a whole bunch of dogs and their owners. Of course, me being from living in DC, I'm like, this is really strange. And then I'm like, I'm in Portland. It's okay. It's cool. So I was like, I'm just kidding. I love this place. So I was like, oh my God, like I really have to like capture this moment. How am I going to do it? I was like, okay, I started off by taking a couple of photos. I'm like, well, you know, there'll probably be a whole bunch of photos of this, of the doggy dash on there. So I was like, okay, let me see what I could do that's a little bit different. I used one of my favorite iPhone tools is called Pano. And if you saw the tweet that I sent earlier of the panorama of the terrace, twitter.com/MarkSLucky, you can find it. Basically, you take a picture here, take a picture here, take a picture here. The app mashes it together and creates this panoramic image. Except, even though the screen is dark, the image is really dark. And I was like, well, that's not helping me. It's really overcast. So, all right, I got to use something to really tell this story. So I used Instagram. How many of you guys have heard of Instagram? Instagram allows you to take pictures and then put cool filters and effects on them, share them with other people. And so I was like, I can really show the joy and the life of this doggy dash by taking pictures on Instagram. So I did. Here's one. Here's another of the bridge. It came out a lot better than the first one. Here are some cute pooches. And this is my favorite little guy. He's really cute. So what I'm saying is to know the things that are available, know what the tools are. You don't have to know how to use every single one of them, but you should know what's possible so that when you have stories, when you run into something like this, you know what's absolutely possible with it. And then either you do it yourself or you find somebody who can do it, but as long as it gets done, that's the point. And we can all create better journalism together if we just educate ourselves. So I'd like to thank you guys for this. Here's an email, here's on Twitter, and thank you. All right, the man. Yeah, oh, questions, yes. What's up?
Storify.
Storify. I was going to mention Storify. I love Storify as a tool. It's one of those tools that I think people rely on too heavily. They use it, they say, oh, we got to Storify something instead of saying, you know, is Storify actually the best tool for it? For those of you guys who don't know, Storify is a tool that allows you to pull in social media updates, Facebook messages, Twitter, links, RSS feeds, and put it into a nice little embeddable package. It's really cool. It just went public, so you can use it. The thing is, sometimes Storify is not the best way of doing that. Sometimes just putting an inline link or an inline image into your article is the best way, but I love the tool. It's really good.
Why doesn't somebody like the Washington Post have that so we can go through the Post and kind of create our own? Is that available yet?
We use it on our own, but this was developed independently by
But why isn't journalists doing it?
Because we didn't have the idea. It's really, even if you don't come up with the idea yourself, there's no reason why you shouldn't go ahead and use somebody else's technology. I think some of the most interesting things that are being built aren't being created by journalists. Washington Post is fortunate to have WAPO Labs, which is just a bunch of geeks sitting in a room much like this, thinking about what's new and what's big. But if you don't have that, find out, like I said, what's happening on the web, what people are using. Yeah? Yes?
I wonder how often do you come up with one of these cool things that just goes on your website without being wedded to a story with it, even if it's just an online story that has a headline and a lead and a story, but it's just a cool thing that just doesn't even have a story to go with it.
Well, I actually had a conversation with my editor about that about 2 months ago, and he was actually the one saying that you should develop more projects that are independent of stories. And I said the problem with that is that the way the Washington Post works is that it's hard to get an independent package that is not tied to a story featured anywhere on the site. And so again, if we can't put all this work into something if nobody sees it. So what I try to do is to focus on stories. How can we complement the stories? Because in the end, we can feature them more people will be able to see it. Yeah.
But if you were king of the Washington Post, you would.
I am. Didn't you hear?
in your parallel universe,
Yeah.
you actually. I mean, would you do that? Would you just say, great, you guys, we don't need the story. We've got this cool thing that tells the story in a different way. Forget the story. Let's just put this up and put it on the top of the opening.
Absolutely. I'll tell you a secret, and please don't tweet this, is that sometimes I wish I worked for the local section because I have a lot of local ideas that I'd like to see put together. For example, there's a cool tool called VidMap, and it's VidMap, VIDMAP.de. And basically what it does is it weds a map to a YouTube video, and wherever the marker moves on the map is the point in the video. And I'd like to use that more just for projects because I know this is something useful, but it's not really useful for the national section. So I do have those sort of things, but the great thing about the Post is that if I can't build it myself, then I can pass that on to somebody else. But yes, there are lots of things that I'd like to work on, but again, it's time management, scheduling, and all that sort of thing. We got to hit them where it counts first. Yes. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Is what now?
You did 12-year veteran of the Associated Press.
Oh yeah, Bert Herman. Yeah, good guy. Well, that's good. I feel better.
Can you repeat that? We can't hear.
Oh, the Storify was founded by a 12-year veteran of the Associated Press, and he created Storify. So geeky journalists are rising to the top. They are no longer relegated to the side. I remember my first paper, the Daytona Beach News Journal. The website was literally like 2 people in a closet, and to see like now having whole fields of people working on the web, it's really encouraging. So yeah, questions? Yes.
Where's your notes? You said you have all the
I tweeted it already. If you go to twitter.com/MarkSLucky, I've got the link to the notes. Yes.
How big is your team, and how many stories do you work on a typical day?
So I'm in a weird position where I don't actually have a team. I pull from the resources of the Post. So I have the national section, and I sit with the national editors, and then we have a social media section, we have an interactivity section, and they work on comments and things like that. We have a video section, a photo section, and all that, and I will go to them and say, hey, I need this to be built, or hey, can you help me build this certain thing? A lot of newsrooms aren't structured that way, but the bigger the newsroom, the more resources that you have. And what was the second part of the question?
How many stories do you work on in a day?
One. I work on one story a day, production-wise. Now, my day is, no 2 days are the same, but usually I'm working on sort of like the big picture sort of stories. I can't tell you what they are right now, but so I'll be project managing for that, saying, hey, did you build this for that? Did you build this for that? But actually, I'll go through the story. Here's what happens. I take my iPad, which is not over here. I write down all the stories that are coming from the day. I identify the different resources that we can add to it. So I'll say, this story needs a comment section. This story needs a forum. This story needs photo. Send it off to those desks. And then I'll identify the one story for the day where I can build something new and unique. Yeah. Yes.
In the year of the paywall, how do you keep innovation going, and maybe you do something cool and people can't see it if they're not paying?
Yeah. Okay. So before I got the job at the Washington Post or at the Center for Investigative Reporting, I interviewed at Newsday. And as you know, Newsday has a paywall up now. And I'm, again, don't tweet this, but I was like, thank God I didn't work for Newsday, because like I could not function knowing that people people weren't able to see my work. The New York Times, I admire their paywall because it's that 20 articles thing, and so people are going to be able to see it. But I think my personal opinion is that paywalls are really inhibiting journalism rather than spreading the news. We're not in the business of hiding the news from people because I mean, one of the tenets of journalism is that we're trying to spread the news as far and wide as possible. And if we're erecting paywalls, I know we got to get paid, but really, I think that's the wrong way of going about it. You know, so I couldn't function that way. I'd be really, really sad journalist. Yes.
I know you said that you have a million ideas,
yeah.
But I'm wondering if there's any kind of process that maybe, or tips or things that you do when you see a story coming down the pike that has a lot of potential, or you know is going to be a big story that a lot of people will pay attention to,
sure.
And you don't have ideas, or maybe for those of us who don't feel like they have a million ideas, are there things that you particularly do when you feel like you don't have an idea
sure.
for a story to kind of create that innovation?
So that happens to me a lot, actually, especially when I haven't had my coffee. I'm like just sort of like staring at my computer screen. So I actually have a list of items on my desk. It's a little Post-it, or a Post-it-sized little piece of paper, and it lists every one of the content desks, or every one of the things that we can create. So photos, video, maps, a lot of things that I've showed you here. And so when I'm ever stuck trying to figure out an idea, I look at that list and see if any of those things can be applied to it. You don't have to create a list because I've created one for you. If you go to 10,000words.net and search for multimedia chooser, or it's either multimedia chooser or multimedia picker, it basically asks you a series of questions and then presents to you the best multimedia type of media that you should pursue. So for example, if it asks you if your story was based on location, yes. Okay, does it have photos? Yes. Well, maybe you should create a map with photos. That's what it does for you. So I'd encourage you to use that tool. Yeah? There was a hand somewhere. Oh, hey, what's up?
Are your days in the Washington Post numbered?
Numbered?
It's well, but it seems
come on.
They're kind of waiting to see how the New York Times goes to put up their paywall.
Off the record, my boss is going to kill me. Well, the great thing about the New York Times erecting their paywall is that people come to the Post, which is good. We'll take their numbers. They're refugees from the New York Times. My days aren't particularly numbered. My greatest fear, though, is that I impart all this wisdom on the newsroom and then I've made myself obsolete. So that won't happen for a long time because I've got all these ideas. When I run out of ideas, that's when my days are numbered, I guess I would say.
They're going to put up a paywall and you're going to move on.
Oh, the Post is not putting up a paywall. So yeah. If they put up a paywall, then yeah, I'll run out the door. Other questions? Yes? No? All right, guys. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.